I'm mostly doing this for a shout out because Mr. Mitchell's History, which is a YouTube channel that you can look up, it's got a picture of a wonderful little giraffe on the front, one of the greatest animals of all time, as associated by me, for no reason other than I can remember it immediately at the zoo because it's kind of distinct. Did you know that they have the same amount of bones in the neck as a human being? How many times did you read that on a Juice Popper or a Totally Wild or on Cheese TV? God, if millennials don't know that, they are truly drug fucked. If you come up to somebody in their 30s and say that point and they're like, "Oh, are you serious?" It is because they are fried. Anyway, we're going to be talking about Mr. Mitchell's History on this because it's a really cool channel. I like it a lot, mostly because it has the same sympathies that I do towards China. And we are a rare breed, my friend. You, me, and Paul Keating, eh? No one else in Australia has even the remotest or faintest interest in it. See, I'm saying this mostly just to get all the comments of human rights. There are human rights. Name them, cunts, and use ones that aren't propaganda points. You can't. Oh, owned. Anyway, sorry, let's talk about the aspects of it. I'm a big fan of it because he's clearly a smart dude. He's a history teacher from memory of the Neil and Jordan podcast. Check that out as well. Now, this is cross-pollination at its finest. I feel like a bee. Maybe it doesn't matter if they go extinct. I'll just replace them. But he's done some good stuff on there, and he's wondering, where do you go from here? Because he got his initial little interest peaks that usually happens when you set up a YouTube channel, and then it starts to peter out. Now, this is the eternal struggle with me, and this is a concept that I would like to share with you today, if I may. And if I may not, you can click off, and then your life gets worse, all right? We're just going to have a party by ourselves. The concept, even though you can define these in different ways, like you can with any fucking word, but we're just going to be using it in this way because I think that it works well in your head to have these two concepts moving around if you're interested in content creation, etc. Being an entertainer versus being an artist. An entertainer, and I'm not saying that they're bad, I'm a huge fan of Akadaka, again, because the guy in its voice is funny, but other than that, they've obviously done something that very few bands on earth have done, which is foster an audience that wants to keep coming back instead of just petering out interest after a couple of albums. Which is really strange, because with most musicians, when they put out the same album over and over, people just go, same shit, and they kind of just peter out. For some reason, with AC/DC, yay, this rocks, this one also rocks, 30 years. But you would have to put them in the category of an entertainer in this concept that I'm just inventing in front of you. Ta-da. Well, also, it's not just me. George Carlin uses this as well. There's also a book called The Artist's Way that kind of uses this. But an entertainer is somebody that is trying to entertain the audience. And that's all they're trying to do. And so once they find their little niche, they keep exploiting that ad infinitum. Your classic Gold Coast stripper / magician. Now, there's some of the magicians that just push it to the limit and then go to the next stage, which would be the artist. Now, the artist is somebody who truly risks doing things in the frontier. My life, I suppose, goes through a higgledy-piggledy of it because I also have to run a business, and those business people at this point also have stake in, just like you should be talking about this, that, yada, yada. And so there is that co-creation, I suppose, that didn't exist before. Nonetheless, I reserve the right to be an artiste, aka comment on reality TV shows. But it's not just that. And this is something that obviously you are always moving in and out of, but you are trying to move towards being an artist, or at least getting that. Because once you go into an entertainer mode, I suppose it just becomes stale. An artist sort of pushes things forward. And a lot of those things, because you are pushing things forward, you are trying new things out, a lot of those things fail. But every now and then, bam. I think you just have to do it. if you have any artistic integrity at all. If you don't, you kind of just sit there in this phase and you'll keep getting the same results, and that's fine if that's what you want to do. But if you've got this kind of yearning in yourself to create, I suppose it is just a creative instinct. You will naturally be moving towards being an artist all the time. You don't want to be limited into something. You don't want to be limited into one way of thinking. And the reason you don't want to be limited into one way of thinking is because you take all of the previous ways of thinking and you mix them together, and I suppose you're becoming a bit of a chef. I think that's what's happened to you, Mr. Mitchell's History. I think you should change your name as well to just China Was Right or something like that. Give us something more spicy. No, you can keep it. Do what you want. Do what you want. But once you stay in that mode, I think that also what starts creeping in is dissatisfaction. I can feel it in myself as well. If I am not pushing it, if I'm not thinking of new things to do, at the very least, in the back pedal, because now, obviously you've got to keep the same amount of content going. And this channel is not that at all. But if I don't have something in the back of my mind of, okay, well, I'm going to be pushing something new here, I can feel it. I can feel myself getting depressed, mental health issues. Not really, but I suppose you just get into a stasis. And you will start hating your work as well. I think that actually, if you go back and look at the YouTubers that have sustained an audience, there's really two things that have happened. Either they've done that consistently, haven't changed anything, and then the other ones, I suppose, have just kept experimenting until they've found a new audience, until they've found a new way of doing things. Those are the two ways that you can work. You can either be constantly evolving, or you can just keep it there as this sort of baseline thing that people just keep coming back to, I suppose, as comfort food. The ones that I think are always declining, obviously, are the ones that just get a huge ego and think that no one else can do what I do. No one else can get in front of a camera and talk about video games. And then, yes, there's also the element of people just get tired of that genre and so they just peter out. But I think the other thing as well is that they do change their content slightly. It's worse, and they don't change out of it. They just keep going, Nyeh. You see where I'm going with this? Your two options are that. I personally think for your own growth, and also what happens to you as a person, is you start evolving. You start becoming more. Each year, I think that you become a little bit better. If you stay in stasis, your mind stays in stasis. If you're lucky, otherwise it goes, but if you're lucky, it'll stay out like this, and you'll just keep doing that for the rest of your life. And it's not like I'm not guilty of it. You go back and you look at my work, there are points where I've just done that for a long time and there wasn't much of this. And then sometimes there's too much of this. It's obviously just an endless experiment. But I think that something is rewarding in that if you are thinking of new things, thinking of new ways to think about things. Your old self kind of converges with your new self, and then you reach a new standard. This is a lot easier said than done, obviously. Obviously, most people are not going to be able to do that permanently. You're not being able to stay on that saddle the rest of your life, and actually, to the untrained eye, a lot of people might actually think, no, it's actually pretty much stayed the same. But you know, don't you? You know if you're just doing this as opposed to trying this and then going, oh, fuck that, yeah, you know? Like, this is much harder on you. It is much more psychologically draining, truly psychologically draining. But if you keep it going, you eventually reach a point where you do actually become irreplaceable because you've just moved your mind into such a unique place. So I think that it's just a win-win on that. That's what I think is always the case. I think that also you should just put up with your audience every now and then going, this sucks, this is shit. That's fine. That's part of the process. Especially because if you just do it every now and then, it kind of just becomes an in-joke. And then when it becomes an in-joke, your community actually becomes closer. Because I think that they just stick around and be like, what are they going to do next? As opposed to, or they're just like, I feel like chicken nuggets today. And so they go back to that one. Those are the options. Anyway, check his website out. Check out the website youtube.com. And then type in Mr. Mitchell's History. And if you want extra videos, more stuff like this, more in-depth, much better for you, for less than a cup of coffee, you should sign up to Jordan Shanks. You won't regret it. I have made millionaires from the information behind that, and on this as well. But you will become a millionaire quicker if you sign up to Jordan Shanks. You want to be a millionaire fast? There's only one way to do it. Thank you very much for listening.